Hi everyone, thank you for joining our Workato webinar series. Today, we are going to cover the topic on how you can create and run your first successful recipe. My name is Alan, and this is Amlan, and today we're going to show you some exciting stuff on the Workato platform. Now, before we begin, I just want to show you how you can post questions to us so that we can answer them later during the Q&A. So any questions you any questions that you see, you can any questions that you have, you can simply click on the Ask New Question button over here, and you can post your questions. And whatever that you post here will be available for us to see, and we will be able to answer them. If you don't see the Q&A sections, simply click on the Apps menu button at the top right-hand corner of the page and click Q&A, and you will be able to see the panel. Now, without further ado, let us start with the webinar.
Hello, and welcome to Workato's webinar series. In today's webinar, we are going to show you how you can build and run your first successful recipe. It's very easy to do. It should take you 5 to 10 minutes depending on how much you know about your system. But it is absolutely easy and you should try it. So the first thing when you set out to building out a recipe is to plan it out. And then once you have planned it out, you go to Workato and you make your ideas come to life. And we will show you how to. You will define your app connections, you will define your triggers, you'll define the actions, and then you start the recipe. So let's see how you go about planning for a recipe. This is actually a very important step. Many people skip this and do it iteratively, and you can do it too. Once you get familiar with the tool, you can do it too. But I like to plan it out on paper and then execute it. It's less error prone, and you can get to it faster. So let's say you want to do opportunities from Salesforce to QuickBooks. So your broad statement is, when an opportunity is created in Salesforce, create an invoice for it in QuickBooks. And that's your basic idea that you have come in with, and you have not thought about it that much. So let's see, when you think about it some more, you realize that it is not all opportunities that you want to move over to QuickBooks. And if it is not a closed won opportunity, you want to skip it. Also, when you create an opportunity, it doesn't necessarily start with the closed won state. Most of the times, your opportunity is updated later on in its life cycle to a closed won step, to a closed won stage. So you modify your original statement to say, when an opportunity is updated in Salesforce, and if it is not a closed won, then you stop. Otherwise, you create an invoice. And then you think about it some more and realize that the account that opportunity was created for may or may not exist in QuickBooks. So you add some more, you take out your original update or create an invoice step in your recipe, and you say, if the customer exists in QuickBooks, then I will create the invoice in QuickBooks. And if the customer does not exist in QuickBooks, then I'll create a customer in QuickBooks, and only then, after I've created the customer, will I create an invoice in QuickBooks for that customer. So that's your basic recipe statement now, that when an opportunity is updated in Salesforce, you first check to see if it is in a closed won stage or not. If it is not, then you stop it. Then you check to see if the customer exists. If it is there, you create the invoice. If not, you create the customer and then create the invoice for it. So let's go to our Workato tool. And the first thing I want to show you when you go to a Workato is, there is a support, there is a companion site, which is support.workato.com, where a lot of these concepts are already explained, especially if you look at the getting started section. If you go in there, you'll see lots of articles on what the concepts are, what are the components of a recipe, what are triggers and actions, configuring actions and all that. You should check it out. If you have any questions, you should go there and check it out. And most likely you will find the answer there. And if the answer is not there, you can always click on this OLARC support area, and then you can go from there to the support site, or you can send a request to us as a question, or start a conversation. Anyway, so when I start creating a recipe, or when I start thinking about creating a new recipe, the first thing I do is actually try to see if one already exists. And in the previous video, I think we covered a little bit of that, which is going through the cloning process. But in today's session, we are not going to talk about cloning and copying of recipes. We are just going to go about creating a new recipe. So let's do a create recipe. We click on that, and you are presented with this screen. Actually, I try to see if my connections are available. So I click on my name and I click on connections, and I see what connections are available to me, what connections I have defined. So I see that I have defined my QuickBooks connection and it is connected, my Infusionsoft connection, my Xero connection, my Salesforce connection, and so on. You could have many, many connections that you have created. And I do that because then I don't have to go into my recipe and define them again. So let's go back to our recipe building. Go to the create recipe. And as you know, the first step that we talked about was to see if in Salesforce, I have an opportunity which was updated. So I select that. And once I select the trigger, and this thing that we are defining right now is called the trigger, which means that anytime an opportunity is created and an opportunity is updated, in Salesforce, I will pick it up. I will get notified. So I can select, what apps I'm looking for. I can select what type of trigger I'm looking for. What is the event that happened, and I can also select the time period that I'll be looking for. And this, this mostly affects the first time you run it, because after that it goes on, continuously from there on. But the first time around, I try to define this as a very short time period, because I just don't want to pick up all the things that are there and process them. So there are many options here in this since parameter. This is defining which opportunities I'll be looking at, which updated opportunities I'm looking at. So I can say, pick up opportunities that were updated in the last hour. I can also go to this toggle and I can select a date and time. So here I can select a date and a time, and that can give me that a finer grained control over what I want to pick up. For now, I will just pick up the last hour, because I created some recipes that for this particular demo, and hopefully we'll be able to pick those up. Actually, I can even click since yesterday, because I don't think anyone has created any recipes, any new opportunities in my system. So once I've defined my trigger, this is telling me when I'm going to activate my recipe. When is a new event going to pop up and start this thing getting processed through this recipe. So once I've created the trigger, the next thing I have to define is the actions, the actions that are going to be taken when this trigger fires. So I look at this and it says, define an action, but I don't want it, this is a very basic action. I don't want this, so I'll get rid of this. And I will add a conditional option, a conditional stop. You remember in our recipe definition, we said if the recipe is not in a stage of closed one, then I don't want to process it. So I look for this, and I look for the stage, and I say if it is not, does not equal closed one, then stop it, right? So now I'm saying, I will ignore recipes which are not in that stage. And after that, if you remember, we said we will check to see if the customer exists. Only then we will create the recipe. So what I'll do is I'll first have to see if I'll have to first fetch the customer from QuickBooks. So now we are getting into QuickBooks, and I select QuickBooks. I select search customer, and I give it the input parameter to do the search. So I have to give it something. Now here, I look at the opportunity, and I see that the opportunity has an associated account, and I know that the accounts in Salesforce correspond to customers in QuickBooks. So I click on this account and click on this account name, and it fills in the account name in the display name, and that is going to be used for the search. Now, an interesting thing to notice here is that I clicked on this thing here, and it expanded. What it is doing here is it knows that an account is associated with an opportunity, and it is actually going and fetching the account associated with this opportunity. So I can map elements from that account into my search criteria. So I've got that search now going. The next thing I want to do is to see if the customer exists or not. And for that, I will do another conditional action. This time I'm not going to do a conditional finish, but I'll do a conditional action. And I click on that, and I say, if the customer did not return anything, so I'll just say if the display name was not present, if it did not find it, of course, none of the fields will be present. So if it is present, that's what I want to do. Then I want to create the invoice. So I will do the create action, and I will select the app again, which is QuickBooks, because I'm going to create the invoice in QuickBooks. I create the invoice. Create invoice, there you go. And it gives me all the fields that have to be filled up to create an invoice. And it tells me what is required and what is not required. So it tells me that company name is required, line item detail is required, and so on. So when I click on company name, it gives me some options of where to fill it in from. So I know that the company name is going to come from the opportunity. I could have even picked it up from the search customers, but I'll go from the opportunity, and I'll do the same thing. I'll just go from there, do the account name. I'll select sales item detail. I'll take the invoice date, and I'll look for the date in the opportunity. Let's say the close date. And then for the due date, it's a slightly different thing. I want to do 30 days after the close date. So I will change this from the normal mode to a function mode. And then I will pick the close date, and then I'll pick the formula, and I'll say 30.days, and that's going to say that it's going to be due 30 days from the close date. For statement memo, I don't have to put anything, but I can put the opportunity name if I want to. Line item, for now I'll just put consulting. If you're doing, in an advanced session, we will show you how to do not just one single line item, but a series of line items, because associated with an opportunity, there may be multiple product lines, and for each product line, you can create a line item for the invoice. But in this basic one, I'm not going to cover that. I'm just going to assume that it has one single line item. For the amount, I'm going to pick up the amount from the opportunity. And for the description, I can just put the opportunity name. And that's all it requires right now. And after I'm done with that, I just click on next, and it shows me that the connections are there. And then I do next again. And here it shows me the recipe name that it has given. It auto-generated some recipe name. I can say here, I can change this and say first recipe demo, Salesforce opportunity to QuickBooks invoice. And I can go ahead and change this auto-generated description also when there's an opportunity. When an opportunity is updated in Salesforce, search for QuickBooks, search for a customer in QuickBooks. Actually, I've checked to see if the stage is closed one. Search for the customer in QuickBooks, and if it exists, then create the invoice. So that's it. I've defined the recipe, and now I'm ready to start. And if you look at it, every recipe has a save button on top. I could have done the save button here, but it also auto saves. But just to be sure, I just save it at the. I make sure I saved it and then I started. So I started, and now it's running. And what it should do is pick up a bunch of opportunities that I've created. And let's give it a few seconds. There you go. And so I have one opportunity which is called not one yet, and one which is one. So if I click on this, I can go in and see that this one, because the opportunity was, the stage was not one. Let's see, somewhere here it should say stage name is qualification. So it failed the test, and therefore it did not go through. The second one, which is called the one opportunity. If I go and look at that, same thing. If I look at this and it says one opportunity and it's closed one, and it searched for the customer and it found the customer, 3D Corp, and it found the customer, and then it created the invoice, and that's the first recipe in action. So you created the first recipe, congratulations, and you have run it. So if you go through these steps, you should be able to do it too. Of course, before you do all of this, you have to have accounts in Salesforce, QuickBooks, and you have to have a Workato account. So if you don't have it, you have to get that somehow. Let me also show you some other things. Let's go back to the recipe here. So now, I can just stop the recipe. I don't have to keep it running now that the demo is done. I just wanted to show you that, we have not completed the recipe as we defined it. So if you want to, you can go ahead and complete this recipe. You can add a new step, and this will be, again, a conditional step. We had said that if you did not have the customer available, then we were going to, so the search customer, if it was not present, then we were going to create the customer in QuickBooks. So I can do that, create customer. And you can fill in all these fields to map it to, what is needed. So display name was, we looked at that before. It came from the account, not that one, account name. And you can fill in the other fields. That's the only required field, so I don't have to fill it out. And then I can add another action to it. And so here there's a thing to understand. When you do this add action, it gives you this 4 possible actions. There's action, there's conditional action, which is if this is true, then you do a bunch of things, which is what we're doing right now. We did the conditional stop in the beginning, where we said if it is not a closed won stage, then stop it. You can also do a repeat action, which is when I was talking about adding invoice line items, you go through a series of items on the input side. So, if you got the opportunity, you look at the products that are associated with that opportunity. You kind of loop through for all the products and create individual line items. So that's another advanced session that we'll show. But one thing I wanted to tell you is that when you are adding a step under this step 6, if I click here, if I do an action here, if you see, it actually indented sideways, right? So 7 is actually at the same level as 5. So regardless of whether 5 turns out to be true or not, 7 is going to be performed. So I don't want that. So what I will do is I'll clean this out, remove it, and then I'll go here, and I have to do it from here. I do the action, and I'll do a same thing I did before, which is create an invoice, and then I have to fill it out again. Now, alternatively, if you're a programmer, or if you have some logic training in you, you will say, hey, why do I have to do this create invoice twice? I can do it just once. So that is also possible. So you could have done this create invoice in QuickBooks down below, and you could have just said, if the customer doesn't exist, then create the customer, and then after that, create the invoice after that. So there are multiple ways of doing this thing. The logic, basically, you can define multiple ways, whatever is comfortable to you and whatever makes sense to you, and then you can always test it out and see that it works properly, and you should be fine. So with that, let me go back to the recipe itself. I don't want to save this one. Leave this page. And if I go back to my recipes, I will see that my first demo recipe is right now over here. And it was updated 6 minutes ago. It's not running right now. It has a gray lightning sign. If it was running, it'll show a green lightning sign. It shows me that there are 2 jobs which went through successfully, and nothing failed. Now, I could have as easily taken this recipe, which is, I just want to show you a little bit of cloning. Excuse me. I could have taken this and converted this into a different recipe. So now that it says clone of first recipe demo, and I could have said, let's say that my scenario is that I always create an opportunity when the opportunity is already in a closed won stage. So then I could have just, instead of doing an updated opportunity, I could have done a opportunity created, and I'll go through this same steps as before, except that I have the steps there. But once I changed my input object, many of the things here also changed. So if you see here, it became red. So now instead of doing this stage, I will have to, instead of using the stage from the updated object, I will use it from the new object, which is the new opportunity, and so on. And all the other fields would have gotten kind of not true anymore, because the updated opportunity record is not there anymore. So I have to remap all of this stuff, and but the same things are available here. So I could just pick it up from there. Just clicked it twice, just click it once, and so on. You get the idea. So I could have cloned the recipe from someone else, and I probably used a different object instead of created opportunity. I'm looking for updated opportunity and so on. And I have to go back and readjust my recipe steps and the maps, and it'll work fine. And I can always go ahead and delete this because I don't really want this. So that's about it. That's how you create your first recipe and run it. And now we'll open it up to questions.
Does anyone has any questions? Feel free to post them on the right-hand panel of the Google Hangout on Air, and we will be able to see them and we can answer your questions. If there are no questions, maybe we can actually cover a little bit more about exploring recipes. So if you click down here on explore recipes, we have actually quite a good set of recipes for the various applications like Salesforce, QuickBooks, and so on. So let's say, you know, in the case where Amlan just ran a opportunity closed won recipe, and I would like to find that recipe and I would like to clone his recipe, what I can do is basically type in some of these parameters. Okay, and one of his name criteria was demo, and I can put in Amlan's name over there, and let's try to find it. And here you have it. We have this first recipe demo, Salesforce Opportunity QuickBooks Invoice. You can click down here. And if you see here, if you like this recipe, this was what Amlan just created, I can actually clone it. And what clone basically does is that it takes a copy of what Amlan has in his account and put it in mine account. And from here, as what Amlan has mentioned earlier, I can then decide, hey, I want to customize it from opportunity updated to opportunity created instead, and so on. And this is how basically cloning works.
And the connections would have been reset, right? To your connection would have been reset to your connections.
Yeah. All right. So we have a few questions from Scott. Let's try to answer them right now. So Scott asked, did my previous question come true? Research and fuzzy match. Does the search function have to be the exact match, or is it a fuzzy match?
It's the way the search works, it'll look for all the words in, the words you put in. It'll look for those words in the description of the recipe. It'll look for the words, if you have comments in the recipe, it'll look for those in the comments. It'll look for the author of the recipe and so on, and give the search based on that. So we can do another one, another search where you can put in just let's say Scott. Actually, I don't know his. There you go. So there's Scott's recipes show up.
So what we search for is based on the app, the trigger, the action, the author, even the description. Also
inside the
comments. Yeah. Oh, one more thing about this Google Hangout on Air. This is the first time that we are trying it. You can always scroll back. If you see at the bottom of the video, you can always scroll back to any point in the video, right, to kind of view what we have covered previously if you missed it. Because I understand some of you all join us a little bit later, and if you want to go back in time to see what happened in the beginning, just simply, it's basically a YouTube video. Just scroll all the way back to the front, and you can actually view the video as and when you want within this during this webinar.
Yeah, so that's a Rick.
All right, so we have one more question. Can you show how you make the connections for the recipe? All right, great question. So let me select that as the question we are answering right now. So there are a few things that we need to cover in terms of connection. The first one is that if you click on the right-hand panel of your account and you click connections here, you will realize that it's either if you have connected your account before, you will find them all in here. If you have not connected your account before, what you can do is you can create a connection from here, and you can select the application that you want, let's say Salesforce in this case, and give a name to it. The name is basically to help you to kind of remember which connection refers to which. So the way I do it is that my name, the way I name my accounts is based, I try to put in, whether it's a sandbox, what is the account email, that kind of detail, so that later on, let me show you how it looks like in a recipe. So let's say I have this recipe that is inactive that I want to run, and yes, Salesforce and QuickBooks. This is the one that I just kind of claimed from Amlan. And here it is. In this case, it is currently connected to my sf1allen@atdemo.com account. And if you see this tick mark over here, it means it is connected. Now, you can also change connections. For example, in this case, I press on the change connection button. I can either select one of the accounts that are currently connected to my account, or I can press add new connection. And this is what most of you will see if you are setting up your account for the first time, because you wouldn't have any connection to change for that matter. So that's where you can start off with, okay, I want to create a new Salesforce connection. And what you do is you press connect. And I don't think you can see my other screen. Give me 1 minute. Let me share. So this is basically a simple OAuth authentication flow. So when you press connect on the Workato account, it will pop up to show the Salesforce login or the QuickBooks login. And from here, you can click on log into Salesforce. And when you log in, what happens is that it will direct you back to the Workato page. Sorry, hold on. Yep, it will direct you back to the Workato page, and you will show, hey, your connection to Salesforce is now connected. You would have to do the same thing for every app that you use in your recipe. And you can always change connections, like for example here, or you can add new connections. I hope that answers your question. All right, next, Scott has another question. When creating a new customer in QuickBooks, if I have an ABC company, I see. Okay, so let us answer that question. To answer Scott's question, yes, it has any search option would have to be an exact match, not a fuzzy match, because we wouldn't.
It can be part of the word. So you can say contains, if you go to.
No, that's the if condition.
Yeah, so in this if condition.
So for example, right, in this case, let's say whenever there's a new customer in QuickBooks and he wants to do let's say a search. Okay, now we have a couple of search options, right? And if you want to search, for example, from a customer to a contact, okay, you will realize that you are very limited on what you can do. You can only search for full name or contact ID, which is limited. It is same for all the other search options like campaigns, contact, leads, opportunities. So these are very limited searching functions where if you know your opportunity, you have the name that exactly match, that is where you use one of these search functions. Now, the one that is more powerful is this thing called the search objects. Let's click on that. Even in search object, you can search for the object called accounts, which is basically like a search account. You can search for the object called opportunity, which is basically like a search opportunity. Now, what this does for you is that when you search an object like opportunity, it will go into your Salesforce account, grab out whatever fields you have within your opportunity, and give you the option to search it based on any one of the criteria over here. Now, take note, For example, if you want to search it by the opportunity name and you pull in the display name from Salesforce, this display name need to be an exact match to the opportunity name. Because if it does not match, the search criteria will not be met. So yes, it will have to be a exact match and not just a fuzzy match. But the other one to take note of is that if in the event that you are trying to do a conditional search, conditional action, for example, what Amlan was mentioning previously was that yes, there is an option for you to kind of filter out based on that condition, whether or not it contains a certain name or contains a certain letter or contains certain things that you want to see. But that is for the conditional action, which allows you to kind of have a little bit more fuzzy match for that matter. I hope that answers your question, Scott. Does anyone has any other questions? Let me just put that on.
No, I think that's it. If there are no more questions, we will make this available to you. Anyone who has registered for this webinar, we'll send the mail to you. And if you caught it from the middle, you can go back and see what was said in the beginning. Like Alan was saying, it's a YouTube video, so you can just, it'll be available as a YouTube video, this whole session, and you can go to the beginning and start from wherever you want.
Yep. I think one of the greatest help section that I think everyone should kind of take note of is actually our support.workato.com page. Oh, sorry, this is not the right one. I need to go to, okay. So this is how you will see it and how it will look like when you are on the support.workato.com page. Now, we have a lot of help sections and a lot of documentation that we have created over time. What you need to do, thanks Scott, what you need to do is that you can either do a search for anything that you want. For example, if you want to know more about cloning, just search it. Oops, sorry about that, cloning. Just search it there. We actually do have quite a number of search documentation regarding cloning and how you can do it. Now, for those power users, you can even search for things like, I want to know more about formula mode, right? And formula mode gives you kind of advanced features on how you can convert strings to dates and how you can convert dates to plus 1 month later, that kind of thing. That you can actually do it with formula mode. There are other solutions such as how often does recipe check for trigger events? This is a common question that we see all the time. So basically, this tells you every 15 minutes there is a polling period where we will go into your Workato account, your various accounts, and check if there's new trigger events. But during the testing phase, this is where this tip here shows. If you are doing testing, 15 minutes can seem a long time. What you need to do is simply to stop and start the recipe again, because when you start the recipe, it immediately triggers Workato to go into your account and pick up whatever new trigger events there are. So do really check out our help desk panel. Our support team has been constantly adding in a lot of these quite commonly asked questions from our conversations with many of our users, and you may find many of them there. However, if you can't find this some of these solutions in our support help desk, simply create a support ticket and we will get back to you fairly quickly. The other way you can get help is through our live chat panel. And our live chat right now, if you can see here, it means that we are not around on the panel, but let me show you how it would look like 1 minute. So yes, this is how it usually looks like, and simply just type in any question that you have. Hi, I need help. And we will be very actively in helping, going in there to sorry, it should be high. Yeah, to show you, to kind of guide you through the process. Is there any other questions? All right. If there's no other questions,
thank you for joining this webinar. And if you have any other comments on it, or if you have any suggestions on how we can do it better, just send us a note back, and we'll be happy to incorporate that in our next webinar. Thank you very much.
Thank you.